Crafty Gemini. I post weekly videos right here on my YouTube channel, and in this video tutorial I'm sharing with you my top 5 tips on how to use the thicker 12 weight cotton thread in your sewing machine. Alright, so let's talk thread for a minute. Now, if you're looking at the different threads you're using for your sewing and quilting projects, if you look at the label and you see the weight of the thread, that's going to tell you basically how thick the thread is. Now, a rule of thumb to keep in mind is the higher the number, the thinner the thread. The lower the number, the thicker the thread. So a 40 to 50 weight thread is probably going to be your middle of the line. It's what most quilters use for piecing their patchwork pieces, about a 50 or 60 weight. And then for garment sewing and things like that, I tend to use more towards the 40 weight. And also for handbag making and holding things together like wallets and purses and stuff like that, I tend to prefer to use a 40 weight thread, okay? Now, today we're going to be using a 12 weight cotton, so you can see that it's lower than that middle of the line thread we just talked about, and this is going to be significantly thicker. Keep in mind that the 12 weight cotton I'm featuring here is actually the equivalent of 2 strands of embroidery floss. So if you do hand embroidery, you can kind of use that as a guide to know just how thick it is. Also, if you've never worked with this thicker thread before, it is going to make your stitches bigger, they're bolder, they stand out more, so keep that in mind as you select the projects that you want to use the 12 weight thread in, because the stitches will be more defined and they will stand out more. They're not going to be like a thinner thread where they kind of just blend into the stitch lines and the fabric. These are definitely gonna pop. Now, the thread I'm going to be using here today is called 12 weight cotton petites. It's by Sulky, and this is actually my thread collection. I teamed up with Sulky to put together this little pack, 6 different spools, they're different colors, and it's called Crafty Gemini's Favorites. As usual, remember I always include a link in the description box below on where you can find the products and materials I feature in the tutorials. Now, I mentioned the 12 weight cotton is the equivalent of 2 strands of embroidery floss. So right off the bat, you probably guessed it, this is perfectly fine to use in hand stitching projects for things like hand embroidery, or what I prefer to use it in is big stitch hand quilting, okay? This is a great way to do that. Now, if you don't do any hand work, or you have arthritis, or you can't really be bothered to spend that much time doing your own individual stitches, no worries, because 12 weight cotton is also the thickest thread that you can use safely in your sewing machine. So I love that the spools are small so I can travel with them, and I take them with me all the time on planes to do some hand quilting projects, but then also because you can use them both for hand stitching or hand quilting, and then also in the sewing machine. So in this video, we're going to cover my 5 top tips on how to make it a lot smoother and easier for you to use your 12 weight cotton threads in your sewing machine. So let's get started with tip number 1. The first tip is the size needle that you're using. Make sure that you've bumped up your universal needle that you're using in your machine to at least a size 90/14. Some people recommend top stitch needles, sharp needles. I tend to find that I have great results using just the plain old universal 90/14 needle, okay? If you ever have any kind of thread breakage or skip stitches, then you may want to bump it up to the 116 needle size. I find that I have no problems with the 90/14. So you definitely want to swap out your needle before you start stitching with the 12 weight cotton in your sewing machine. Tip number 2. When it comes to the bobbin thread, you definitely do not want to wind a bobbin with the same 12 weight cotton, okay? Surprisingly enough, when we first start off sewing, they tell us you always want to have the same thread up top that you do on the bottom. In this case, when we're working with such a thick thread on top, you don't want to stitch with the same thick thread in the bobbin area as well. I have had great results with 40 weight, 50 weight, and even 60 weight threads in the bobbin area. So if you do a lot of sewing and quilting, chances are you can just use the same old bobbin that you have with some neutral color or even a matching color of the top thread that you're using in the sewing machine. So do not wind a bobbin with the 12 weight thread. Go ahead and you wind a bobbin with your basic usual thread that you stitch with. Around a 50 weight will work fine. Tip number 3. When it comes to adjusting your top thread tension, chances are you're probably going to have to lower the top tension. And that's because the thread we're using is thicker. So we don't want the discs, the tension disc, to apply that much tension to it, because then you're going to get thread breakage, and that means that the little discs are holding on to the thread so tight that it's not letting it flow through easily. So if you loosen the tension, you're going to let it go through and slide through a lot easier through those discs with the thicker thread. So Keep in mind that you're going to probably have to use your user manual to locate the tension dial on your machine. Some of the newer computerized machines have auto tension, so you may find that you don't even have to touch it. It will automatically adjust the tension based on the thickness of the thread going through the automatic tension assembly, okay? Other more mechanical machines, you may have to adjust them. Personally, from my experience, I have found that on some machines, I need to drop the top tension all the way down to almost a 0, meaning it's really loose. The lower you go in the number, the looser the tension. The higher you crank that dial up, the tighter the tension, so keep that in mind. Your best bet is to play around with your machine and adjust the tension a few different ways and see if you don't have any thread breakage. If the thread is breaking before it even makes its way to the needle, chances are there's way too much tension applied onto the thick thread. So loosen that up, play around until you find the tension that works for you. And that's for the top thread tension. For the bobbin tension, I would not recommend that you adjust the bobbin tension just yet. Start off playing with the top tension and see if you can't just get it to work and get some really nice stitches without touching the bobbin tension. If you have a mechanical machine or a semi-industrial machine where it has the kind of metal bobbin and the bobbin case and you know how to adjust the tension there, then feel free to tweak that in order to get the perfect stitch quality that you're looking for. If you have a computerized machine with the little drop-in bobbins, don't try to mess around with the bobbin tension on that kind of a machine. Instead, simply play around with the top thread tension that you can adjust up or down until you get the stitch quality that you're looking for. Tip number 4. You can totally use some of the fancier decorative stitches that the computerized machines have when you're using the thicker 12-weight cotton thread on the top. Now, one thing to keep in mind, if you notice that you're getting some skip stitches on whatever little sample you're stitching out on, make sure that you lower the stitch speed, okay? Sometimes these computerized machines can stitch really fast, and if there's too much bouncing around in the design that you've selected, it will often break the thread, okay? If that's the case, slow the machine down a little bit, and also consider increasing the needle size to the 116 size needle so that it can flow through the needle eye a little bit easier without that added tension and that kind of shredding of having it rub the needle eye going so fast at the higher speed that you may be stitching at, okay? But definitely you can use the fun decorative stitches that the computerized machines offer these days when you're using 12-weight cotton thread on top. And tip number 5, your best bet is going to be to set up some sample projects, whether they be quilted or just 2 layers of fabric, and stitch out some experimental lines of stitching. You may find that on your machine with the 12-weight cotton on top, it stitches out some designs, some of the decorative designs, better than others. So play around with that, make yourself a little sample sheet that you can look at, and then you know whenever you're working on a project and you kind of want to give it an extra little pop of some fun stitches and color, that you can go to your 12-weight thread, look at your little sample piece and how it looks out stitched out, and then go ahead and apply it to the project that you're wanting to use, okay? So definitely experiment. Don't be afraid to try the 12-weight cotton in the top of your machine, and it doesn't have to be used on thin fabrics. You can also use these as your quilting stitches. So try maybe some quilt as you go projects, some quilted little zippered pouches, bags, and things like that, and use the stitching on the top with the 12-weight cotton to really add an extra pop of texture, dimension, and of course, color. So there you have it, my top 5 tips on how to use 12-weight cotton threads in your sewing machine. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you'll give it a try, whether you use the 12-weight for hand embroidery or hand quilting like I often do, or using it for some really fun and bold stitch lines in your sewing and quilting projects. Remember, I've included a link in the description box below for you on where you can order your pack of Crafty Gemini's favorites 12-weight cotton thread collection I put together for you. There's a link right there for you on where you can place your order. Now, if you enjoyed this video tutorial, please hit it with the thumbs up below, share it across the different social media sites, and don't forget to click the subscribe button so you won't miss out on any of my future videos. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.